So in case you missed it, preview impressions of the new Elden Ring game dropped, which is interesting. Of course, they're doing network tests. They're prepping it. It's on its way, but the responses have been either very positive or thoroughly confused, which has been kind of interesting to sift through. Because there's some people who got the chance to play it at a preview event. To be clear, they were not allowed to record their own footage, so they had to use just B-roll, which is always kind of like, oh, but it's also work in progress. I don't like preview and like any sort of press thing where they provide the footage to you. I think that is always sucky. But that being said, they did have that preview go out and different outlets covered it. You can see Vati also covered it. A bunch of typical From Software style creators covered it. And it's very different. It's very different. So I think we'll check this out real quick before the PlayStation State of Play kicks off. And I'll share my thoughts because this, again, like the more I hear about it, the more I think it could be fun, but I think it's going to, like, it sounds like it really doesn't have a lot of content here. I think it's the type of game that's going to be really fun for a weekend. And then you're going to kind of run out of stuff to do based on what they've said about it. But we'll look at this. We'll check it out. From Software creators are better than IGN previews for me. I would be inclined to agree with you. The problem is I don't want to step on anybody's video performance by reacting to it. So IGN is IGN. They have 18 million subscribers. They'll be fine if I react to their video, but I don't want to like step on another individual content creator in their previews. So we'll take this for information and footage and stuff, and then we'll talk about it. Okay. So this is their little preview impressions.
Before we begin, I just need to say that the footage in this video was provided by Bandai Namco, as no capture was permitted during the event.
Sad face.
So unfortunately, some of the really cool things I talk about may not always be perfectly represented on screen. Now, on to the preview.
Tragedy must be averted. And for that, I need your help.
Elden Ring Nightreign is not a battle royale. Not that you ever thought it was, but as a former battle royale enjoyer, I can't help but compare the white knuckle moments I get when the storm closes in on me in those last gripping moments of a half-hour-long session of a Fortnite match to the nail-biting bits where I'm desperately trying to outrun the encroaching circle and make it to a life-saving site of grace in
I mean, more than anything, I think it's a roguelite. I think that's what you're feeling. I mean, battle royales were always kind of built around that same feeling that roguelites have provided for like decades at this point. So that's probably more what it was. But I have seen some people in the comments section of our videos talking about Nightreign that have been like, yeah, it's actually going to basically be an Elden Ring battle royale, which I think is awesome. And it's like, that's not what you should be expecting.
In Nightreign, PvP elements are completely absent in Nightreign, though not missed one bit. Still, you'll drop into a map with a squad, start from nothing, and spend your time ransacking the map to hopefully power yourself up for the final battle. From the risk-reward moments of looting a church for one more flask charge as the circle closes in, to the wave of sadness you feel when experiencing a devastating loss after taking so much time building yourself up, it's hard not to see the Battle Royale influences. But after 4 hours of playing the upcoming stress test build, I'm ecstatic to report that Nightreign probably won't tarnish the Elden Ring name.
I feel like that's not a great way to start your preview if you're like, it probably won't destroy the reputation of this beloved franchise. Or game, I guess it's not a franchise. With this, it'll be a franchise. It's not a great way to start, you know? That word probably is freaking me out just a little. It's like if we go out to dinner, we actually ran into this thing when we were on vacation in the Bahamas. Because a lot of the food hygiene, like processes, cleanliness, not really a thing out there unless you're in like a resort. So there was like, a fish that was covered with flies on like this cutting board. This guy was making conch salads and stuff, and it's just flies everywhere. And I was like, I like turned to a friend of mine. I was like, do you think we're going to get sick if we eat this? And he's like, probably not. was like, I don't want probably not. I want not. I want no. We're good, fam. I don't want to hear probably. Probably is a dangerous word to hear when somebody's trying to assuage your fears. And spoiler alert, we did get sick. So, but we also had norovirus on that same trip. So we were getting destroyed from the food and also destroyed by norovirus. It was those toilets put in overtime, to be real, at the Bahamas. But anyway, TMI, right?
When beginning a match, you'll be given a choice to pick one of 4 available classes, though there will be a total of 8 when Nightreign launches.
Okay.
The current options will be the all-arounder Wilder, the speedy glass cannon Duchess, the tanky Guardian, and the magic-wielding Recluse. Each class has its own strengths and weaknesses, of course, but in my time with this build, I found that the most fun class to play was the Duchess, thanks to her powerful abilities and swift and nimble dodges. I also spent some time with the Recluse, which was incredibly powerful, but I ran out of FP quite often, and with no FP flasks, they aren't in this Elden Ring, she'll definitely be one of the harder classes to play effectively.
How do you have magic users in an Elden Ring game and no FP flasks? Because you run around the map, this map, collecting like additional flask charges for your healing for like the big boss fights, but they have like a specific magic class, but you don't even have the option to get additional charges for your FP flask. There just isn't an FP flask. Is that not weird? So you have to go through the entire cycle, the entire day, before it loads into the next day or night or whatever, and you have to pace yourself with your charges. That's very, I don't know. It's a bold choice.
Each class comes equipped with a leveling path, which I'll talk about more in a moment, but more importantly, they all have unique skill and ultimate abilities. The Duchess, for example, has an incredibly powerful skill that repeats the last 1.5 seconds of damage an enemy has just taken.
That's cool.
And it has a short cooldown to boot. Also,
That's a cool
it's not
ability.
Just your damage, it's everyone's damage. So while you're flipping around the battlefield landing attacks, you're also waiting for huge health spikes to try and capitalize on doubling that damage. It's great stuff. Other skills also match the class's predetermined role. The Wilder can do a blast attack to try to land big damage. The Guardian can create a large shield, both negating damage and reviving fallen allies, while the Recluse can curse an enemy, granting all attackers HP and FP bonuses. So while players can double up classes in a run, it's always a good idea to talk about team strengths and weaknesses to diversify your group. When starting completely fresh, players will find themselves in Nightraign's Roundtable Hold. After matchmaking with 2 other random players, or using a multiplayer password to play directly with your friends, a small cutscene will play and everyone will soar over Limvale, not Limgrave, before landing and beginning their run.
Yeah, one thing I see as mentioning, so they say specifically that there's no flask for FP, but there's abilities that can buff FP. So you should, in theory, be able to refill it like during sequences. You just would need some team synergies and some ability synergies. So still, I find it interesting there's no flask, because that seems like just an obvious fix. But anyway, one of the other things, as I mentioned, with 2 other party members you'll join. One thing, just in case you're not aware, the game, as of right now, is not going to launch with the ability to do 2-player parties. It's 1 player, single player, or it's 3. There is no 2-player option. So if you got just 1 buddy, sucks to suck. They've said, though, that they are considering allowing 2 players. So possibly after launch, they would patch in the ability to play with a party of 2 instead of a party of 3. I still find it interesting that they didn't just include that to begin with. My guess is it's because they have the health pools and everything is balanced around 3 players, and they're like, number of parties that will be just 2 players is not that big, so we'll just make it 1 or 3. But to me, it can't be that much work to just set the multiplayer up to be different. But anyway, continuing.
A full run of Nightreign lasts around 30 to 45 minutes, depending on how fast you take down the ending bosses.
Okay.
While it's presented as a 3-day cycle, it really boils down to 5 separate phases.
Also, look at the map. So some people were confused. They thought it was the same map as Elden Ring. It's the whole map and you just, work your way through it. No, it's its own thing. So as you can see, this is a pretty good, literally bird's eye view of what you can expect. And, this is the same tower structure that you see down here. Same ruin is over there. So this is the same angle, but in this shot, they're flying like over right here probably. So the map is a decent size, but it's not the Elden Ring map. If people were confused or expecting that, it's not.
Day 1, Night 1, Day 2, Night 2, and the final boss. When Day 1 begins, the map is fully open, and that's when you'll begin exploring and leveling up. Everyone's level 1 at the outset with basic starting gear, save for relics that you're rewarded with at the end of every round that grant you persistent buffs between matches, with better relics being offered for better performances. Once landed, my team always beelined for the first enemy camp we could find for a quick boost of experience to begin leveling up, which was key to defeating stronger foes. From there, you'll decide what your team wants to do by looking at the surrounding area on the map.
So that gives you an idea of the map scale that we're dealing with, which, I mean, again, it's a total run is about 30 to 40 minutes, he says. So a total run going through the multiple phases, going through day, night, like that's going to be 30 to 40 minutes, which is not a lot of time when you think about like your typical Elden Ring playstyle, which is why I've said from the outset, from when they announced this, I was like, it could be fun for like a weekend. And then I'm expecting people to just kind of burn out and run out of stuff to do. And more than anything, I think it will play very, very differently than Elden Ring. Like part of what I loved about Elden Ring was the sense of accomplishment of finding a tough boss, working hard to understand it, and then overcoming that challenge and beating the boss finally. And maybe even tweaking my build or what weapons I'm taking, what armor I'm taking in order to overcome their specific challenges. In Nightreign, that's just like that part of the experience is not here because that's not what this game is. It's just not. Yeah, it randomizes the map each time. I'm talking about the size of the map, to be clear. So like specific layout, yeah, stuff can alter, but the size of the map, the scale of the map is what I'm referring to. So I just think it's going to be very, very different. That doesn't mean that it'll necessarily be bad. I just think if you like really no-lifed and loved Elden Ring, this will play very, very different.
Map, as it will be littered with points of interest for you to explore. Each point of interest typically comes with predictable rewards. Churches will house a flask charge to increase your overall health potion uses. Castles will feature a mini-boss that drops more powerful gear, and rises, similar to Ranni's Rise found in the lands between, will present a simple puzzle to solve before entering to find even more gear.
With those puzzles, they don't go into it in this one. Did Vati or any of those guys, did they mention the puzzles in more detail? Are they also changed each round? Or is it like the same puzzles over and over again?
Just to name a few of many. Where to go in Limvale feels kind of overwhelming at first, but the threat of the ever-closing circle will eventually train your brain to keep on the move. Speed is the name of the game during the day cycle, and luckily everything seems to be built around that. For starters, leveling up is as quick as a button press. As I mentioned, each of the 4 network test classes has a predetermined stat upgrade path. So when you run up to a site of grace to refill your health, FP, and flash charges, you'll also be presented with the leveling menu, which only requires you to press confirm to increase your level. Heck, you may even have enough rooms to level up 3 or 4 times, and with 3 or 4 button presses, you're all done and substantially more powerful. If you have experience in Souls games, the day phases should be a breeze. While searching the map for loot upgrades, I ran into recognizable Elden Ring mobs. My team and I decided to take down a camp, but first we had to fight 3 scattered fire chariots before getting our loot reward. Another time, we climbed to the top of a castle to fight a Godskin noble. That should be scary, but with 2 other tarnished by your side, these mobs and bosses go down pretty fast. Moving around is also way faster than in the original Elden Ring. You won't be clawing the controller anymore since sprinting is moved from circle, or B, to simply clicking the left stick. Sprinting is also about twice as fast as the regular Elden Ring. Fall damage? Nope. None here. Getting down a cliff is easy, and you can even run up walls parkour style or use spirit springs to get around. Besides just rune hunting to raise your level.
Jeez, man. Leo says Iron Pineapple said that his towers had the turtle puzzle, but they found a way around it and don't know if it was bugged. Oh man, if it's just like the turtle puzzle, quickly crank out the turtle puzzle, look for the invisible turtle and stuff. Like, it's kind of frustrating for me. Like, what's kind of is just to hear that there's like very little that's new. The sprinting being overhauled, this little sort of wall running parkour thing is new and different, and might be awesome, might be a great addition. But like content wise, there's no big like new boss fights, there's no new totally original stuff. It really is, they just like built this thing using the scraps from all these other things. And I don't know, man, it starts to feel cash grabby pretty quick, you know, and that it just leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
You'll
It might be fun
trying
though
to build a character to take on the night bosses. There is no armor, save for shields, in Nightreign. Only 6 weapon slots and 2 amulet slots. How it works is, in typical Elden Ring fashion, you can switch between your left and right-handed weapons and shields on the fly, but everything on your person will give you buffs. For example, let's say you found a Reduvia dagger with high bleed. If you so choose, this could be the start of a bleed build. Now let's say you take down a boss and you're presented with a few other weapons to choose from, and you spot a spear that increases your status effect buildups. You're not going to use that spear, as you'll want to stick with your dagger, but you'll still benefit from the status effect buildup the spear provides just by having it on your person. Think of it almost like a roguelike. Sometimes the synergy of weapon effects and stat upgrades you'll get will build off each other so well that you'll eventually start melting mobs left and right. Other times you'll want something like a poison build, only to keep getting weapons that increase your FP regeneration. Bummer. Weapons...
Okay, FP regeneration. Okay. Still, flasks I think would be a nice welcome addition, but he mentions FP addition abilities that can respawn it. So already it sounds kind of like walking that back, but I still think that no FP flask is surprising. Yeah, 10 minutes left until the showcase, everybody. 9 minutes. We're close. Let's finish it.
Aren't the only rewards either. Oftentimes when looting a boss, you'll get to choose a stat upgrade or a modifier. Some of these are less exciting than others, such as a 10% increase in physical damage. Useful, yes. Exciting, not so much. Other times you'll get something really cool like a passive power-up that drops a big poise-breaking lightning strike every time you dodge, or an enemy slowing frost nova every time you begin to sprint. You can work these into your build for some powerful combinations. While the day phases can feel like a walk in the park, it's the night bosses that serve as a real skill check. After the circle has closed enough to end a day phase, a minor Erdtree will appear, signaling that it's time to take on the night boss. Over the hours I played, my team ranged from completely decimating the night 1 boss to barely scraping by. If someone goes down, you'll revive that person by simply attacking their downed body. With ever-increasing attacks needed,
the PlayStation music. Hold on. 9 minutes, 20 seconds. Hold on. It's very loud. Continuing.
The more often they drop. Regardless, the way the night 1 ends will usually inform you on how the rest of the run will go. I've seen teams come back from barely scraping by the night 1 boss, but if that boss was tough, you're likely behind in your leveling and you'll have an uphill battle ahead of you to have a chance against the night 2 boss.
But even that, like he just said, the night boss is the first real big skill check. But then 30 seconds later, he says that it's usually a check on whether the loot you've gathered is good enough and you're on pace for the leveling that you need to be. So I'm like, is it a skill check or is it just based on how much garbage you found while running around? I don't know. Because again, like so much of what I love about Elden Ring is that it is so skill based, but with this being shifted towards primarily loot based, that to me is like, oh, you know, it's not as exciting to me.
Day 2 begins the same way Day 1 did. You'll once again have a full map to explore to level and find better equipment and power-ups. Occasionally, you'll be invaded by a random Margit the Felloman who will chase you until he dies or he wipes your party. If your team wipes during the day, you'll drop your runes and respawn at the nearest site of grace. You can recover your runes, but the main thing lost here is time, which was wasted fighting an enemy you didn't get a reward from and wasted having to recover your lost runes. If your team wipes during a night boss, it's game over and you'll need to begin a new run. By the time Night 2 rears its ugly head, it's time for the final skill check. During our playtest, we were met with 2 different night bosses. You'll either be faced with the Centipede Demon, who is tough but feels somewhat manageable, or 3 Sentinel Knights that really, really suck. In my 6 or 7
just 3 Sentinel Knights, they're like, just copy and paste.
full runs of Nightreign, my team was only able to get past Night 2 just once. Finally, day 3 is incredibly straightforward. There isn't one. Instead, you'll be able to spend your last bit of runes either leveling up or buying consumable items from a vendor, and then you and your team will take on the final boss of the run. As I mentioned before, depending on how far you got in your run, each player will be rewarded with a relic that provides a persistent upgrade for your characters. These can range from simple stat increases to modifiers that will set you on a build path right from the jump.
I mean, the more I find out about the game, I'm like, it could very well be really baller, badass, and awesome. My gut's telling me it'll be really fun for a weekend. But I think in terms of like, I've been playing this for weeks. I'd be really surprised, because that's the other thing is I think we did the math based on a previous statement they made. I think it was like 32 total bosses that cycle through for each run based on the like night bosses and the day boss, or night bosses and the final bosses. And so like after a handful of runs, you're going to start to see everybody that you were going to see. And then they also have to balance it so that you're able to fight the bosses fast and quickly. So I don't know. It's very, very interesting. It's very, very interesting. And it's $40. I don't know. It does feel kind of like the Valhalla expansion thing they did for God of War Ragnarok, where they just like for free put out this like awesome roguelike mode just for fun, for free, that also had a narrative component to it. It kind of feels like it should be something kind of like that. $40 is like, I don't know, man. But that's the thing. FromSoft has one of the most devoted fan bases in the industry, and they're gonna, I think, vote with their wallets pretty forcefully. And it seems like the sentiment from the core Elden Ring fan base seems to be fairly positive.
He took my thing.